Well, good morning. It is good to see you all here. My voice will come back in a moment, I promise. Great to have all of you that are joining us online. So Stacy started us off on this series last week, Hurts, Habits, and Hangups. And I'm gonna tackle habits here this morning, right? And just the perfect thing that everyone's just like, yes, let's go to church and talk about habits. When we think about habits, just think about any action that we repeat maybe without even thinking about it, right? We just do it in this like habitual kind of way. And habits can be positive. We most often think of them as being negative. And we're primarily gonna talk about like on that negative side. What are the habits that get in the way of life around here? And usually we think of things like biting our nails or procrastinating or smoking or hoarding or licking your lips too much. I had someone I knew, a friend in high school, who would always lick his lips just out of habit. And then he'd just get chapped. Have you ever seen that? Or maybe that's happened to you, right? You just get like chapped all the way around. And we were in a class, it was a VOAG class. And if you didn't go to Marana High School, that's vocational agriculture, okay? And so we were in class and they was all chapped and it was really starting to bother him. And I remember the teacher paused for a second and addressed it. And he goes, that seems really bad. He goes, oh yeah, teacher, it's like really hurting or whatever. He goes, I tell you what, just go out and we had like these cattle pens out there. And he goes, just go out there and just get a little bit of manure on the end of your finger. And we're like, oh, yeah. And he goes, just smear it, just rub it real gently all the way around like that. And the kid's just like, oh, and he goes, yeah, and just, finish it right out there. And he goes, that'll make it better? And he goes, nope, but it'll sure keep you from licking your lips. Yeah, so, there's all kinds of ways to deal with habits. I want to talk about habits and maybe broaden the way you think about habits, because they become these sticking points that keep us from living the life that God has either made you for, called you for, or that you want to live in some way. And I want you to think of them in a little bit different way, the types of things that we engage in, and maybe even without realizing it, it just gets us stuck some way in life. Like for some of you, like you've got a habit of saying yes all of the time, right? To everyone who asks. And the next thing you know, it's just like, why did I say yes to that? I keep saying yes to these things that I really don't want to do. But out of a habit, right? There's something you formed with that habit about saying yes. And it's getting in the way because there are times when you need to say no to something. Or some of you have a habit of blaming. Like no matter what's happened, like maybe you grew up in a home where like if something went wrong, somebody or something is responsible, right? And it just kind of got ingrained in you. And if there's something wrong, it's just like real quickly, like out of a habit, there's blame that's got to be laid somewhere. And maybe it's even like a self-protection kind of thing. Or some of you have a habit of being pessimistic. Of course, you probably say, I'm just being a realist, but your friends are like, no, you're cynical, right? And you go to that dark place really, really fast. Or think about all the different types of habits that we have that distract us. And there are times when distraction is a good thing, like we need a distraction. But how often do we end up creating a habit, right? Like going endlessly over social media or binge watching Netflix or something. Binge watching, there's a time and a place for it. But what happens when it's just like you start binge watching shows to the point like it's getting in the way of life, or like you can't get off of Twitter or TikTok or YouTube or whatever it is that just so engrosses you that it, like in a way, you're stuck in this. Or how about this one? Sometimes we can develop a habit of actually sabotaging relationships. if there's a relationship that starts getting a little too close, or at a place where it's just like, okay, now I'm starting to feel vulnerable. And instead of like, okay, I need to figure out how to deal with the vulnerability on this. Maybe this is the right person to move forward with. But you find yourself at that place where it gets vulnerable, always doing something that just sabotages that relationship so you never have to become like vulnerable in a moment. Or maybe it's just a habit of becoming defensive in some way. Or finding a way to just avoid pain, that like you run. Like if there's something going on, you're just like, oh, that's gonna be uncomfortable. And instead of maybe going through something that's uncomfortable or painful, when it would actually be healthy to do so, like you've got this habit of just like, you find your way to run, like metaphorically out of it. We all develop those habits. For me, I grew up like in a home that was really good, really, really positive, and somewhere early on, I developed a habit, like if something got hard or tough or painful, like who wants to go through something hard or painful, right? So I picked up this habit somewhere of just, I'm gonna find the positive thing in it. I'll find the silver lining in every situation and hang on to that. But really, it was avoiding dealing with maybe something I needed to deal with, right? But hey, when you become a professional, like silver lining finder, right? You just think, this is terrific. Everyone would love this. And I really thought that. And then I got married. It's like, maybe this doesn't work as well. And maybe you have, a professional silver liner finder in your life, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. We got married. Angie's car broke down one time, and, she's talking to me about it. And I'm like, well, gosh, think of like you got some fresh air and you got to stand next to the car and not have to do anything. And I'm just like, let's find all the positive things that you got to do while the car was broken down and you were standing on the side of the road, right? Who wants to talk about being stranded on the side of the road when it's, fresh air and things are going well? One time she had an encounter with someone that was just really mean to her. This just really hard moment, right? And I think it was at a doctor's office and something had happened and she was telling me about it. And I was just like, well, I bet that other person was going through a lot. And maybe if you knew their story, like you wouldn't feel this way. And, let's find the silver lining so that you can be in a better mood right now. And we don't have to be in this space of something's hard or difficult. And, and so for me, it seemed really good. But the truth is, there was kind of a habit that I kept going to, right? That was actually getting in the way of developing the kind of relationship that I really wanted with Angie in this. And here's the thing, when you think about it, there are just so many ways, isn't there, to get stuck through a habit. And so let me ask you this question. What's the habit that you know of in your own life? You'd go, oh, that habit maybe kind of gets me stuck at moments. But you find yourself getting pulled back into it over and over again. Changing habits is not easy. And maybe they don't change in all the ways we think they would change. I came across a research study out of a book that I was reading, and it was about change, but it got into this thing of with habits. How do we change these habits? And in particular, they talked about this research that was done through Johns Hopkins University by Dr. Miller, and he was the dean of the medical department at Johns Hopkins at that point. And he was a heart surgeon, and he noticed that he had done all of these heart surgeries, and he had taken some of the worst and most difficult cases where someone was either in incredibly intense pain because of a heart condition or near death. And when he would do these surgeries and he would put them on like a new regimen with statin medication, new diet and exercise, all of these things. And it was like transformational initially, right? They were on the edge of death or in so much pain they couldn't even go on a short walk. And he puts in a stent or does a bypass, and it's like within a week, what they feel is dramatic. But here's what he found out. You go a year after that, and the percentage of patients that are still in good shape dropped dramatically. And I want to say it was 8 or 9 years after the fact. Only 3% of the patients that they studied had made a sustained change. And the thing that drove him crazy, and the other doctors that were working on this with him, was that most of these patients were back in for more surgery within that 9-year period. And they didn't need to be if they simply changed a few simple habits, like change their diet some. And it didn't have to be crazy, just some simple changes with their diet, some very simple, moderate exercise. And one of the most shocking ones was just take the statins, just take the medication. And most of those patients within a year or two had given up on even taking the medication. And the prevailing thought was, we need to educate them better. So it was more facts. Here's what the exercise will do. Here's what the diet will do. Here's what these amazing miracle drugs called statins will do. And they gave them all of these facts, and that didn't hardly change them. And then they added fear, right? And he talks about the method was facts and fear. We're gonna give them the facts of it. And then the fear, it's like, do you remember all the pain you were in? You're gonna be back in that pain if you don't make these changes. And they would like try to scare these patients. Like, if you don't do this, like this is what's gonna happen. You could die, you can like all this stuff. And it still like 3% were the ones that were sustaining the change. And what they came to realize was breaking these habits is hard. And the thing that doesn't work is facts and fear. And so this morning, I want to talk about maybe how to change some habits that are getting in the way of you living the life that God has called or made you to live. And maybe we take a different path than just facts and fear. And to do that, I want to walk through the life of, or most of the life of someone that we find in the Old Testament, this character by the name of Jacob. And because he's got a couple of habits that I want to look at here, and there's some things that we can glean from his story. His name is Jacob, and Jacob is the grandson of Abraham. So if you've heard of the famous character Abraham out of the Bible, this is his grandson, Jacob. Now, as I walk through this, we're gonna actually look at like 10 or 12 chapters out of scripture. And so there's no way to like read all the passages and everything. So I'm gonna do a lot of summarizing of a bunch of passages, and we'll read a few real pertinent passages as we get to different moments in the story. But before we dive into his story, let me just give you the two habits. Here's a way to think of the two habits that Jacob struggled with. When it came to something that he wanted that he couldn't get in a normal way, his first habit was, I can get what I want through deceit, right? If I'm struggling to get something that I think I need or something I just really, really want, I can use deceit to get what I want. That's the first habit. You just see him repeat this over and over again. The second one was, and this deals with the repercussions of using deceit. Because what happens relationally when you use deceit to get something you want from someone else? It creates a little conflict. It creates problems. So here's the second habit that he dealt with, and it's this. I can get out of what I don't want by running, right? He's just gonna flee. He's a runner, right? When those relationships and the high conflict hits, he just bolts, literally. That's what he does. That's his two habits here. So I want to look at his story here, and you'll watch how this plays out. So Jacob has a twin brother, Esau, but Esau is older by just a few moments. But that's a big deal in this culture because the older son was the one that would naturally get what was called the birthright or the lion's share of the inheritance. With it comes like a lot of privileges and stuff. And beyond that, his older brother Esau was also like this great big burly guy, like he was a man's man, he was a hunter, and their dad really preferred and loved Esau, which left Jacob constantly feeling like he was never enough, like he wanted his father's approval and just couldn't get it. And he wanted that birthright, like just the money that came with that, the prestige that came with that, all of that. So we're gonna watch him play this out. And there's this classic moment early on in their story where he does this. So he actually deceives his father in his father giving him the birthright instead of Esau. So Esau's off doing whatever Esau was doing. And their father had gotten old enough, he had lost his eyesight, but he wanted to pass on this blessing. And so he asks, bring Esau, I want to give him this birthright. And it'd be this formal thing where the father would give this blessing and formally pass this birthright on. Well, Jacob finds this out. And so he gets like sheep's wool or skin or whatever, because his brother was like this hairy guy. And it's kind of this funny story. To most people, it's kind of a funny story that you put like sheep's wool on there and talk like your brother and like, give me the blessing, Father, and I'll make you some stew from some animal I've hunted, right? But it was funny maybe to everyone except for who, do you think? Esau, yeah. Because Esau lost that blessing. And you have to understand, in this culture, it's not like you can just go back and say, oh, I made a mistake. Actually, I intended it for Esau, not you. When the father gave that blessing, he gave that blessing. So Esau gets really upset. And I want to read you this passage. So this is found in Genesis chapter 27. I want to read just one verse to you, just so you can get the grasp of this. Verse 41. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. I'm gonna have the proper time to mourn my dad. And then he says, then I will kill my brother Jacob, like for what he did, right? And so what do you think Jacob did in this moment? He runs, yeah, because that's his habit. That's what he's gonna do in this moment. So he takes off and he just runs. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this in your life, but God has this way of using the circumstances in our lives, doesn't he? To try and get our attention. And this is true for Jacob here. So Jacob's got this habit of, I'm gonna use deceit to get what I want, and I will run to get out of what I don't want. So he takes off and he runs to a place called Haran, which was to the northeast of where they lived, because his mom's relatives lived there. And so he gets there and he meets one of his relatives, a guy by the name of Laban, and he has two daughters, Leah and Rachel. Leah is the older one, and we kind of gather from scripture, she's gonna be the harder one to marry off, okay? And in this culture, you would always wanna marry the older one off first, and probably in particular, if you think for some reason she's gonna be harder to find a groom for. But when Jacob shows up and he meets Rachel, the younger daughter, he is like smitten by her. He loves her. And so he works out this deal with Laban, because Laban, of course, would be like wanting to marry off Leah first. He's like, what if I work for you for 7 years, right? 7 years, then let me marry Rachel. And so Laban's like, it's a deal, right? And so he works for 7 years, okay, in order to marry Rachel. He goes the entire 7 years, and then they set up the wedding, and Laban puts together this, this shindig of a wedding. It's this huge feast, and everyone in the community turns out for this thing. And so just picture this massive, massive wedding with all of these people. And there would have been people from all over, and they're bringing gifts, and I'm sure, they had unity candles and all kinds of wonderful stuff, including probably lots of wine and alcohol. I would imagine there was a lot of drinking at this wedding, and you'll see why here in a moment. Because they go through the entire wedding, and now evening has come, right? And picture, a nice tent. It is the honeymoon tent, the honeymoon suite with, nice, very dim candle lights. I'm sure there was some Bedouin jazz band, just outside the tent playing the latest Bedouin music that there was out there. And now we have, the candles and the soft music and probably a very drunk groom who goes into the honeymoon suite. And so Laban sends not Rachel in, right, but Leah, right? And so I want to just read this passage to you. So this is over in Genesis chapter 29. So they spend the night together. And Jacob doesn't realize what's happened right away. So in verse 25, it says this, and in the morning, behold, it says, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, what is this that you've done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why have you deceived me, right? And I love the irony in there. Why have you deceived me? So says the guy who, like, his regular habit is deceiving people to get what he wants. And now all of a sudden the tables are turned, right? That's the point of what's happening in this part of the story here. And if you think about it, this is one of those moments in the story where maybe, right, Jacob could have went, that didn't feel so good, right? Being deceived like that. Maybe I need to think about how I do this to other people. I've got this habit when I think there's something I want and I don't know how else to get it. I've got this habit of I'll go to what can I do to deceive them to actually get the thing I want. And the thing that happens to him here, what you see is like he doesn't see it, right? In this moment, it's missed on him in this. But that's easy to do, isn't it? I recall a moment when Angie and I, not long after we were married, Angie was in the hospital for probably close to a week. And a few days into it, she was not feeling good. And we were kind of trying to figure out like when she'd be able to get out of the hospital or whatever. And I was in the room with her and I'm sitting there and a nurse walks in to check on Angie and goes, they asked like, how are you doing with the pain on this? Where would you put it on a scale? And I blurted out, she's doing great. Yeah. And Angie's like, and she's like half comatose and she's like, no, I'm not doing great. I'm in a lot of pain. And then the nurse looked at me like, what kind of husband are you? It's just like, I came in here to take care of your wife. And you're like, oh, she's good. Get out of here. And I think back to that moment. That would have been a good moment for me to go, maybe I've got a problem with the silver lining thing going on here. It's just like, we're great. Everything's wonderful. Like, no, your wife's in the hospital and she's in a lot of pain. It's okay to say things aren't great right now, right? But it just got missed on me. Ever have a moment where maybe you see it in someone else? Where there's this thing that they're repeating, and you can even see how maybe it served them. Maybe it was a habit that served them well, because oftentimes our habits do serve us well. But oftentimes they become habits that stop serving us well, and they get us stuck in some way that keeps us from what God really has for us. And I bet you've also noticed that sometimes it's just hard to see it, especially in yourself. And that's what happens with him in this moment. He misses that the very thing that's happened to him is the thing that he keeps on doing over and over again, which leads to this. So I want to walk you through three things, right? If facts and fear aren't the best way to go about changing habits that get us stuck, I want to offer you three things here out of this story that I think can become keys to actually changing habits that get in your way. And the first one is this: awareness. Because if you don't have awareness that you've got an issue, it's hard to do anything with it if you can't see it, right? So maybe a first step is just on a regular basis is taking a moment when you're praying and just say, God, is there something I'm missing? Right? Just to even have a moment in a quiet time or a time of prayer with God and just say, God, help me to see something. If I'm caught in this pattern and not picking it up, will you help me see it? Or maybe there's a moment where you can talk to someone that you really trust and just say, is there something you see in this particular part of my life or something where I'm caught in a habit that's getting in the way of things, right? Because here's the wonderful thing about God, right? It's not like God is like, okay, you've got your one opportunity to figure this out. Like God has this way of keeping, like bringing it back to us. And if we'll look for it, oftentimes you'll find it. So there's this other moment in Jacob's life where he works another 7 years and actually gets to marry Rachel, okay? And he's working for Laban, but he wants more, okay? In fact, he sees how wealthy Laban is becoming and he wants a piece of the pie. Only, what do you think he does? Do you think he does like a straight up deal with Laban in a way that's really honest and forthright? No, like he delves into this kind of deceit that's actually tricking Laban out of a bulk of his flocks and livestock that ends up making Jacob very, very wealthy. But guess who's losing out on this deal? Laban and his sons. In fact, his sons pick it up and they're like, our inheritance keeps leaving our home and going over to Jacob's home. And suddenly, Jacob picks up on these sons of Laban are upset with him. And what do you think Jacob does initially? Runs, that's right, because that's what Jacob does. He runs when he feels the conflict. So he packs up and he takes off, only he's got this problem, right? When it was just him and you go on the run, you can take off and be fast and disappear in the world. But when you have 2 wives and all of their servants and their kids and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of livestock, like camels and sheep, and you go on the run, you're kind of like a giant, slow-moving caravan. So he takes off on the run, but he doesn't get very far until Laban and his posse, his sons and all of his men, track them down where they're camping, where they've tried to run. And there comes this confrontation. And I want to read to you this confrontation because God actually speaks to Laban in this moment. It's like, okay, don't kill him, right? Don't kill him. But I love what Laban says in this moment. This is found in Genesis chapter 31 because this is kind of a turning point for Jacob here. So chapter 31, verse 26. And you can just picture this moment, this confrontation that Jacob is having that he was trying to run away from. Then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? You've deceived me and you've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of timbrels and harps? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my granddaughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. And again, it's another one of these moments where it's this kind of wake up time for him. And in a way, it's like he sees it. He sees it enough to realize, you know what? There's gotta be something more to life than just all the things I've been chasing after and running away from. And I think we get these moments of wake up calls. He gets one here. There was a moment Angie and I were talking. She had a really hard day at work, and we got home at about the same time, and she was kind of walking me through the whole thing and telling me about it. And I'm listening to it, and my habit is, okay, where's the silver lining? Where's the silver lining, right? And I'm not thinking that consciously, but unconsciously. That's it. Where's the silver lining? Oh, there's the silver lining. And I just blurted out. And I'm just like, oh, you could do this. And I'm going through this thing. And I'm explaining to her why she doesn't need to feel bad about the bad thing that happened at work, right? Which, every spouse loves their spouse doing for them. And I remember she held out her hand. She goes, hold it. Stop trying to fix me. oh. And for whatever reason, in that moment, it hit me. I was like, oh, this is not the kind of relationship that I want. And there's something about it, I just realized I'm always going for that silver line. Now, there is a place for positivity that is wonderful, right? That's a good thing. But when that positivity becomes a habit that makes the most important people in your life feel like they're people that need to be fixed, your positivity isn't serving you or your relationship anymore. Now, it wasn't like I was just like in that moment, I was like, okay, got that fixed. It was just, but it became this moment of awareness of like, okay, I keep going to this thing and I see where it's taking me is not the place I really want to go. Which leads to the next thing here that becomes really, really important in this third thing, and that is vision. You have to have a vision of what you do want. Because oftentimes when we become aware of a habit that we don't want, like you see that, but right, that's never enough for most of us to really get us to change the habit. Just seeing the negative side of it, just saying, man, I don't like what that does. We need that awareness, but it's rarely enough to really, really change us. With that John Hopkins research that they did, they went through, and one of the things they started to figure out was that 3% that changed, one of the great commonalities with them was they all held something very tight beyond just the negativity, the negative side of what was affecting them by their heart condition. They had dreams of the kind of grandparents they wanted to be, or parents that they wanted to do. Some of them, it was as simple as saying, there's a place that I want to go visit, a trip that I want to go on. There's an activity that I want to engage in with my friends, whether it's pickleball or tennis or going out to the movies or whatever. What they had was a vision for the thing that they wanted in life. And so as they started processing this, what they realized was if they could get these heart patients to actually think beyond just the pain of what they were going through and actually reach out and say, there's something that I want my life to be about, a purpose. Their ability to actually overcome those habits and actually make some of those changes greatly, greatly increased. So let me ask you this question. What is the life that you think God has really made you for? Do you have that sense of purpose? Is there the thing that you just say, I think God made me for that? Or the thing that just you just say, whoever God made me to be, I have a longing for this. Do you have that sense of vision for the kind of life you do want to live or be like? Because that's going to become really key in this. And one of the things that Jacob starts really paying attention to is this vision that God has given him for life. So he is the grandson of Abraham. Abraham puts forth, or God says to Abraham, I'm going to bless the entire world through you. It's gonna start with you, and then it's gonna go through your family. And Jacob was one of the characters, right? It was his grandson that this blessing was gonna flow through into the sons of Jacob, and then onto a nation, which would be Israel, and then onto the entire world. And God's saying Jacob, I need you to get this vision. And it's here that Jacob starts to finally hold on to this vision of this deeper thing. And this helps him to start making some changes. He's gonna struggle, but he's gonna start making these changes. And so what is that vision for you? Because if you don't hold it tight, if you're not clear on it, the fears and all the other things are gonna get in the way and cloud this. We see this happen with Jacob. He knows now that I need to go back to my homeland. I need to go back. I wanna go back and restore things with my brother Esau. I want to go establish my family there and watch God work through me. He wants that, But there's kind of this struggle, and it's a struggle that we'll all feel at moments, kind of working through, kind of overcoming those habits. And I want you to see a prayer that he prays. So he's going back toward his homeland. So he's got his whole clan and all of his livestock, and they're slowly making their way there. He's terrified. And why do you think he's terrified when he shows up in his homeland? Yeah, Esau is there. And the last time he and Esau chatted, it was about killing him. And so he's a little nervous about this whole thing. And you can just see him like ready to bolt, right? In fact, it's kind of humorous, looking back 3,000 years later. But normally in this situation, you would see a guy's like, okay, I'm gonna get on my horse or my camel and I'm gonna ride into town and say, brother, I wanna make this right. But he's still worried that, what if Esau starts, killing people? How about I send some of the livestock first? I don't think, because then if he starts, killing the livestock, then I'll have a chance to run. And how about I send my servants in front of me? How about I send my, Leah and Rachel in front of me and all my kids? In fact, he's the last one to cross the Jordan River. And you're just like, oh man, don't bolt. But I want you to hear this prayer that he prays. And this is in Genesis chapter 32, starting in verse 11. Here's what he prays. And you see this struggle. So the first part is he prays this: save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me and also the mothers with their children. So this is the fear, right? God, if I do this, and you just feel that struggle, the fear. And we're all gonna feel that, right? The thing that wants to pull us back into that habit. But here's the vision part of it, verse 12. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and I will make your descendants, and this is that promise from Abraham, and I will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. And you just see him go through this struggle where it's like, okay, this is what I'm afraid of, but I've got this vision of who you've called me to be. And maybe he's given us a good way to think about how we can pray when we're struggling to overcome that thing. That it's like, okay, God, there's this thing that keeps pulling me into this habit. I want to find the silver lining. I want to be the pessimist because that kind of protects me a little bit. I'm going to say yes because I'm afraid of what someone's going to say. I want to be distracted because if I'm not distracted, then I'm left with my own thoughts and all of these things. And I'm just afraid of where that will take me, to anxiety or depression or worry or something. So I want to, and it's like, but God, I don't want to get pulled into all of these things that I lose sight of what you're calling me to. And maybe just praying in a way that's honest about the fears, but holding to the vision is a really strong way to move forward in all of this. Which leads us to the third thing. So he hangs in there and he crosses over, right? And his brother has found out about this, and he's got like 400 men and riding strong toward him. And you just see the fear on his face. What he doesn't know is Esau is actually at a place where he has forgiven his brother and he wants the relationship restored as well. And he comes riding up to meet his brother. And then he, runs into all these camels and sheep and all the servants and all of this. He's sorting through all this stuff. In fact, there's kind of one humorous verse. I'm gonna just read you this one verse, not because it's critical, but because I find it humorous. And it's just like, this is so, before he's just finally made his way to Jacob, and he says this is chapter 33, verse 8. Esau asked, what is the meaning of all these flocks and herds that I met? I'm just trying to get to you. And I just keep running into all of this stuff. And it's like, well, because I was afraid that you were gonna attack me, and I thought it'd be better to, lose my flocks and servants and my wife and my grandchildren. And, he's a real upstanding guy at this point. There's a lot of work that needs to go on. But he's taken this step, and it leads to this third part. And it's simply this: relationship. When he meets Esau and he finds someone else that embraces him and the vision that God has given him, all of a sudden the relationship, it's like the thing that just pulls you forward in the changes that you want to make. when we're trying to create change in our lives, overcome those habits that keep pulling us in another direction, relationships are so very powerful. If you can see it and you've got a vision for the thing that you want, if you have a relationship or relationships with people that you can talk to about that, there's something magical about it. There's something about the way God made us as human beings that we thrive when we're in relationships with other people that are with us in that. And that's what he experiences in this moment, right? To experience that grace, to experience that encouragement. In a moment where you're weak, to have the encouragement of someone who's with you, it does something wonderful. And I know, like for me, even just having moments where I could talk to a friend or other pastors or people and just say, I keep finding these silver linings at moments, and I realize I'm aggravating my spouse. And now I'm wondering if I'm doing this with other people. And just to be able to talk about that and see maybe God's got something else becomes really, really powerful. So friends, right? It is awareness, and it is that vision and finding those relationships. That's the path to getting unstuck from habits that are keeping you from the life that God really has for you. I'm gonna close this out in prayer here in just a moment. But before I do, if you're new here or visiting or a guest, we are genuinely grateful that you're here and just feel blessed to have you here. And I would love to just be able to shake your hand and just personally welcome you here this morning if you're a guest or visiting. And I'm gonna be right over here by these high top tables. Or maybe you're here, maybe you're new here, or maybe you've been here for a while and you wanna know more about, I wanna take another step and get more deeply connected into my church here or whatever. Come over and find us. We've got staff and directors over here that would love to help you out this morning. Or if you want someone to pray for you, we've got our prayer place over here. There are some wonderful people that would love to pray with you or for you. Why don't you stand, and I'll close us in prayer here this morning. Let me pray. Father, I thank you for your graciousness and the way you keep coming back and leading and pulling us towards just trusting you and helping us to give up those habits that get in the way of the life that you really have for us. And I pray that you help us to see your vision for our lives and to find those relationships that you've blessed us with. And we pray all of this in your son's name. Amen. Have a great morning, and we'll see you next Sunday.